Hey, it's Rob. Welcome to Axel's Garage. Still working on Cosmo, getting this front end back together. I have an axle, I have a hub, I have a backing plate, and we're gonna get it together. So the axle, the U-joints in the axle. Now, normally you can take these axles and use either a vise with a hammer or a ball joint press locked into the vise to replace the U-joints, and it's usually a fairly easy job. There's a ton of YouTube videos on how to do it. However, the ears are fairly fragile. They do bend easy, and if your U-joints were like ours, one was completely locked up and one was real sloppy, almost ready to break. We have a local guy that we use who's a very, very big driveline specialist, differentials, U-joints, drive shafts, everything like that. So we opted to take it over to him, and what he does is he will, with a torch, he's going to burn out the center section of the U-joint and push the caps out instead of banging them in, so you can get the one out and then banging it out the other way. Because of the amount of rust that we had in there, I was concerned that I was going to destroy the ears, and then I made it expense getting new axles or a stub half or a axle half, whatever it might be. So I opted for that route. Doesn't necessarily need to be sent out. I just did it because he's a couple blocks away, does real great work and very convenient. So he put in spicy U-joints, non-greasable. His opinion, greasable U-joints in the front always seem to get water in them. The non-greasables have much more longevity, and he only uses Spicer, sources them himself, and make sure that they're legit Spicer joints, not knockoffs. Once I got it back, I just cleaned it up and gave it a coat of Eastwood's rust encapsulated paint to try to keep the rust at bay. And let me move the camera and we'll get started on how I'm going to prep this to put it in. So now, what could possibly be a completely unnecessary step that I take, and I'm taking it because New York rust, if you're a Rust Belt guy, you know what I'm talking about. I take some of my synthetic white grease that I have linked in the description below. Like always, I am going to link everything we use in the description below. So this is where your heavy rust was on the axle when we took it out, and it has this plastic factory dust seal. So I'm going to slide this back on so that this is going to sit where this grease is. Hopefully that synthetic grease will just keep everything at bay. On the business end, or the end that's going to go into the front differential, you have your shiny metal part here. This is where your seal is riding. So this one was in real nice shape. Seal rides here, and then this is the part that's going to go into your spider gears and your diff. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some bearing grease, and I am going to coat this very heavily from past where the seal rides all the way to the tip, and this is going to solve a couple of issues here. And again, is this necessary? You can get away with not doing this very easily. But what this is going to do is this is going to lubricate where it goes through the seal and where it rides on the seal. Because you don't, and on this end here, I'm lubing this up because this has got to pass through the rubber seal, and I don't want to rip that rubber seal installing it, so I want it to glide right through. And any grease that gets wiped off is actually going to be wiped off on the outside of the diff, which is going to create a little bit of a moisture barrier, so that if water does get in the axle tube, it's got to pass that grease and then the seal to get into your diff. So a little messy, yeah. Try not to hit it with your hands, and it's not too bad. So once that's done, now your axle is ready to slide in. So you are just going to take it, and what I like to do is try to keep it in the middle, try not to let it hit the tube, the end with all the grease hit the tube, that where it's going to grab anything. Just do the best you can. It's going to hit it there around, and you got to try to find that hole and get it in there as gently as possible. And it's feel is how you're doing it. Alright, once you feel that you got it through, you're going to slide it in and move it around until it engages with the spider gears, and you'll know when you're all the way in. And you can turn it from side to side and you can feel the resistance. You know you're in the spider gears. Okay, and then you're in there like that. Didn't get too dirty. Just a little white grease on my hand actually, and it went in fairly easy. Alright, now my next step is lubing this end up here, and I'll bring the camera in so we can get a better view of this. Alright, so we're at the business end over here, and I'm going to take my synthetic white grease and I'm going to wipe it along the surface where the back of the hub bearing sits, and just give it a nice coating in there, and that's just to prevent corrosion and having the axle shaft, the back of the shaft sit seized to the hub. And then I'm going to take some of the same white grease and I'm just going to go over the splines. And you can grab the U-joint on this side and lift the axle up and turn the axle so you get everything. Again, this is not a critical or necessary step. This is completely unnecessary, but we do it because we deal with a lot of rust. Alright, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to put a little white grease on the threads here. I forgot to do that when I was doing the splines, and that's just to prevent those threads from rusting, because you could see before I put the grease on it, I should have pointed it out, but the threads over here where it was exposed as opposed to where the nut was, what a big difference. They're like going to shit. So I'm just going to give it a nice coating. Just a little rust preservation. You know, it's not 100% necessary like most of the things I'm doing. This is just to deal with rust. So now I'm going to take some anti-seize and I'm going to go just on this face here. And this is where the backing plate sandwiches between the hub. I'm going to go just on the face, just a little light coat, completely overkill. But when it's your own car that you want to last, and you know you're probably going to be taking it apart at some point again, when Emily decides when she's in South Carolina that she's going to find some place to go riding through the woods or who knows whatnot. So I'm gonna take my new bolts. These are Spicer. I'll link them in the description below, like everything else. Brand new Spicer bolts. They come in a box of 10. I bought a box of 10 because I knew I had to do 2 vehicles, which gives you 6 in each. So I'm too short to do the 2 vehicles, but that's not a big deal because I did have a couple of dormant ones laying around for the next one. So your backing plate now is going to go on, and we're going to put it in the right spot, and we're going to hang it like on the threads of the bolts, right? So you push the bolts through all the way, and the backing plate will go into the threads on those bolts, and that'll hold the backing plate in place. So now we're going to take the hub, and the hub is going to get a little bit of a treatment first. So I'm going to take my hub, I'm going to take my anti-seize, and the surface between the hub and the knuckle and the backing plate is all going to get anti-seize. So that's the side of the bearing itself, and the bolting flange is all going to get a thin coat of anti-seize. I did this with, all like the Yukon Suburbans and Tahoes, all those cars, when I do hubs. And when you got to do a hub a second time, it makes it so much easier. I'm going to work my way, and it's not you don't have to put a ton. You know what it's like using anti-seize. Turn into the Tin Man, it gets all over you. Just a light coating around that whole surface. Okay, And now this is your bearing here, and it's a sealed unit. But what I like to do is take some of this synthetic white grease and coat. You can see those seals in the gaps, and I just want to coat this. And this is just as a preventative for moisture penetration, so that we don't get moisture penetration. And again, completely unnecessary. It's because we live in the rusty part of the country. So now, onto the hub. This is not going to go in easy. Very rarely does it slide right in. It goes in like this much, like maybe 3/4 of an inch, and then it's got to be perfectly squared up with the knuckle for it to go in. And it's the splines. The clearances in the splines are so tight that it doesn't always go in nice and easy. So give it a little wiggle. Try to find the spot, you know, where you're on the splines. There's no keyway in the spline or anything. Ooh, that one went in. All right, that one went in fairly easy. If you have trouble, a little dead blow on this lip here helps it get in. So now that one went in, I want to push my bolts through, and I just want to start each one just a thread or two, so I know I'm in. So now those are 13 millimeter, 12 point. So I just want to pull this in. So just not tightening, just bottom them out a little at a time, just to make sure we're in all the way. All right, they're rolling all the way, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one out. All right, and we're going to take this bolt, and we're going to give it the anti-seize. The shaft, I'm going to wipe the shaft with anti-seize. To prevent rust. And then we're going to hit the threads with anti-seize, because we know they tend to rust up. Alright, just like that. I'm going to take it, slide it in, and run it down. Alright, just till it seats, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go around and do that with each of the bolts. Okay, now I'm going to take my 13 millimeter 12 point socket on the torque wrench for each of these hub bolts, all three of them. They are get torqued to 75 foot-pounds, so I'm just going to give each one a little bit of a tighten. So I gave a nice turn to the other two on that side. Now I'll go to this one. This one I'll get a turn, and then final tighten. 75, and then I'll turn my spindle back. 75. Alright, so now I need my washer, spindle nut, cap, cotter pin for over here. Before I put my washer in, I'm going to take a glob of my synthetic white grease, and I'm going to just put some in the gap between the axle stub where it comes out, and that's just to prevent water from getting in there. Again, all unnecessary because we live in a rusty area. That's what gets done. So we're going to take our original washer, slide it in there, on nut, alright, like I said, the front of this axle stub was in poor shape, So, you know, those first few threads, that's why I'm doing it by hand, and put all that grease on it. I want to make sure that I'm on the threads nice before I start driving it home. Alright, and I'm going to take my 36mm socket with the impact, and I'm just going to give it a little buzz home. Alright, nothing crazy, because I want to torque this. So now I'm going to take my torque wrench, 36mm impact socket, and I am going to up this torque wrench to 175 foot-pounds. So I'm going to turn it this way so that I can put the torque wrench out this way to make it a little bit easier for me to get the leverage on it that I need. I am going to finagle this pry bar in here. Like this, so that the pry bar is hitting the ground, and as I tighten, the hub is not going to turn, and I'm going to go to 175 foot-pounds. There we go. Now I'll take my pry bar out. I have my cotter pin cap. I'm going to put that over, and I have a used cotter pin because this is a monster sized cotter pin, so I'm going to stick it in the hole, get it straight, and I'm going to use this one because that's all I have. I don't have a cotter pin big enough. So I tried to straighten it out. It worked a little bit, so I tap it in a little. I can straighten it a little bit more. Alright, now this one, I like to have it come down. See the way it is there? I'll show you. I like to have it come down like that, and I'll show you why in a second. So I like to tap it down good like that, and grab my side cutters and what to do is bend it up and over like that on each side. Again, do this whichever way works. I'm not looking to get into a cotter pin argument with anyone. That just happens to be the way I do these. Alright, now wipe off my excess there. Done. Now we can put the brakes together. We'll do that in another video. Alright, we're on the home stretch. I think we got, like, you know, not too much more to do. Let's put the brakes together, reconnect the steering linkage, steering stabilizer, and the front diff fluid, and this is a done project. And I just got to do some general maintenance for her. Emily can start driving, and the only other thing we need to do on this Jeep before she goes to school is the stereo system. So they're replacing the head unit, the speakers, putting an amp and a subwoofer in it for her so she could be jamming to the tunes while she's at school. That's it today from Axel's Garage. Links to everything we used in the description below. Comments on my excessive use of a variety of different lubes. Let me have it. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. Down in the comments below. And if you do live in a rusty state and you do all this stuff, hey, how about coming to my defense? Thanks for watching.